Hey, this is Nick Millivoy.
And this is Jason Shadrick.
And this is the 100 Guitarists podcast, where we talk about the guitarists we think you should know. Today, we're talking about somebody who is somebody that both of us hold near and dear to our hearts and playing.
He's a top 10 guy for me, top 10 player for me.
Oh, yeah, man.
Where's he at with you? He's in the top what?
I don't think about things rank. I have like my top three and then everybody else. He's not one of my top three guys, but he's a top guy. Put it that way.
Neil Young's in your top three.
Neil Young is in
and he's not number three.
And he's I thought you were going to say, and he's not in yours.
Well, no, both are true. Both are true.
I mean, Neil is probably the North Star there, you know?
Yeah, man. But anyways, today we're talking about John Scofield with one of our good buddies, Adam Levy, who is an absolute amazing player. One of the most heard guitar solos. I mean, that solo on Tracy Chapman's Give Me One Reason is
right. I remember when I found out that was him.
All-timer.
Yeah.
You know, it's such a great solo.
It's so crazy. What a famous solo to have played, right?
Right.
What a famous song to have played.
It's interesting. He's in probably that rare category where something he's played is kind of more famous than he is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You hear like a lot about session players or something where they play, you know, like on the theme to a TV show. You know, no people might not know who it is, but their playing has been millions and millions of people have heard.
Oh man, I can think of a classic example of that, which is, you know, back in the day when I was a reader of Guitar for the Practicing Musician, which at that point that I was reading, it was then just guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Carl Verheyen. Is that how you say his last name?
Are you going to say Saved by the Bell?
I am going to say Saved by the Bell. He's
a
column about it.
Yes, I remember reading that. He's like, I remember like the premise being like, I was in the other room and I heard this guitar playing on a Saturday morning TV show, and he's like, oh yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and if I remember correctly, he had like the lick transcribed.
Yes.
Yeah.
The Chuck Berry opening, dude.
That's awesome.
I was right there. All right. Well, you can get at us at 100guitarists@premierguitar.com, or you can call or text us at 319-423-9734. You know, that's a 24/7 hotline, Nick. No,
that's right.
We have our staff working 24/7 to answer all your 100 Guitarists podcast needs.
Mm-hmm. And while you're at it, while you're thinking about the 100 Guitarists podcast and reaching out to us and all that stuff, you might as well rate and review wherever you're checking out this podcast, right?
Mm-hmm.
Before we move on, bring on Adam. Before we move on and bring on Adam, we want to thank 2Rock for sponsoring today's episode. 2Rock amplifiers are hand-built by master crafts people in 2Rock's Rohnert Park, California factory. Each amp is tested and voiced by none other than owner Eli Lester himself. As a discerning guitarist, you know that the road to great tone begins with great components. 2Rock's classic design, carefully selected parts, and hand-built approach combined to make an extremely versatile instrument that you will have for life.
So I have had the pleasure of playing quite a few 2Rocks, mostly at NAMM shows, but I did review the Bloomfield Drive a while back. You being a native New Jerseyan, know that the title of that amp probably has nothing to do with Mike Bloomfield, which originally I kind of maybe thought it might. It is not.
I didn't know that if you had asked me what it was named after, I wouldn't have thought about Bloomfield, New Jersey, but tell me more.
That's when I asked, I was like, so is it a Mike Bloomfield tribute? And Eli's like, no, it's just named after the street in Jersey or whatever. So maybe he's a big Sopranos fan. Could be, right?
I like that.
But I also had a friend recently want to get into the world of 2Rock, and The two amps I pointed him towards were the Bloomfield Drive and the Classic Reverb Signature. Are my two favorites, and I've seen Scofield play a 2-Rock from time to time on some videos. So you can head over to that's two-rock.com, and check them out. They make impeccably built, roadworthy amps that rarely break down.
Love it.
Dig it.
All right, so let's bring on Adam. We're going to talk about John Scofield. So, Adam, we started talking about bringing you on when you released your most recent album, Household.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that album, and that's a 2-guitar setup. You got you and Chris Bruce on there. I feel like Chris Bruce is a real undersung cat that I always love when I hear him on an album, and I really enjoyed this album.
Oh man, thanks, Nick. Thanks so much. Yeah,
it's a good guitar record for sure.
Man, thanks. Yeah, Chris is super special. He produced it, and he's on every track, which wasn't necessarily how we planned it, but it felt good to make the record that way.
But while we're doing our Adam Levy deep discography deep dive, I want a special shout out, Adam. I'm not kidding, and I'm not saying this because I would say this even if you weren't on the line. Maybe one of my top 10 favorite records of all time is Washing Day.
Wow.
I mean, I think the first time we met was at a South by thing when I was with the National Guitar Workshop, and you needed a ride to a gig. And I gave you a ride to a gig, and you had given me Washing Day. I was like, oh, wow, this is great. And because I'd known you as kind of more jazz guitar guy, and this is a singer-songwriter thing. And I remember that year I wore it out almost to the point where I had to buy a new one. And thankfully, then streaming came along, and I was able to preserve my CD copy and do it. But shout out for Washing Day. That's one of my favorite records.
Man, Jason, thank you. Thank you so much. Wow.
There we go. All right. So now that we've got all that out of the way, Adam, now that we've reached the point of entry, I think for most people coming into this maybe, is what was your point of entry for John Scofield? And to me, I describe that as an album that got you into his playing. And then from that point, obviously you were aware of everything after that, but then that was the point where you also started to go back in his discography.
Mm-hmm.
What was your entry point for John Scofield?
Yeah, it was actually a Larry Coryell record. There's a record, I think it came out in 1979. It's called Tributaries. And it's 3 guitars, no rhythm section. It's Larry Coryell, Joe Beck, and John Scofield.
Oh, wow.
Do you guys know this record?
No. I don't. I know those players, though. Joe Beck, I mean, shout out Joe Beck. Alto guitar player.
Mm-hmm.
Real interesting player, but also a great straight ahead 6-string player.
Yeah. And so this record, I think I had read about Scofield and Larry Coryell in, can I say the name of another guitar magazine?
All of them. You can say them all.
Okay. Well, this in 79-ish or 80, when this happened, Guitar Player magazine was the guitar magazine to get. I mean, that was all you could find, and I loved it. So I had read, like, Larry Coryell had some columns, some instructional stuff. And then there was an article on Scofield. It might have been like talking about him playing with Miles. I'm not sure exactly of the year, but anyway, I went to my local record store, and the record that I found that had John Scofield's name on the cover was this Larry Coryell record called Tributaries. And I listened to that. It's a really interesting record. It's just 3. They're all on acoustic. They're all on Ovation guitars.
Nice.
Or maybe Adamas guitars. Like, that's the setting. No rhythm section. 3 guys on these guitars. And the first time I heard it, of course, I didn't really know who was who. I couldn't tell who was Scofield or Coryell because I didn't know they were playing. But the more I listened to it, there was this, I could tell that one of them had a more, he would kind of lean into the notes in a particular way, and sometimes his phrasing would be kind of back behind the beat, and there was just something different. It seemed not coming out of straight ahead as much as the other two guys. And over a little bit of time, I learned that was John Scofield, the guy whose playing I was kind of homing in on. It turned out to be John Scofield. And shortly after that, yeah, so that's a 79, 80-ish record, but I must have heard it more like 80, a little later than that, because the next Scofield record I got was one called Still Warm, which is like 85 or 86.
86, yep.
Yeah. And so then that really confirmed, oh yeah, that guy that I was hearing on the Ovation guitar doing all that, like very touch, a lot of, I use this expression, practical effects.
I like that.
Yeah.
You know, doing stuff, shaping the note, but just, you know, not with any, you don't need a 9-volt battery. Yeah.
That to me, so you heard Still Warm like when it came out, you're saying. That was the album. And then that was kind of your point. You're in the pipeline. You're keeping an eye on everything he does after that. What about you, Nick? What was your entry point?
Yeah, I think, I mean, any player with a long career is going to have, like, when you jump in at different parts of the river, right? Like, it's going to be a different thing. And it's so interesting because I was just thinking as you're saying those, like the albums that I heard first were very different albums. Like maybe the first jazz recording I ever owned was a cassette tape copy of I Can See Your House From Here that somebody gave me as a gift. I remember I listened to it a lot, but I didn't really understand. I was young. I mean, that album came out in 94. So this was probably 96 that somebody gave me a copy of it. It was like, 96, I was 13 years old. Like it was adult music, that was, but I remember, like, I wanted to know about this. I wanted to be a better guitar player and have, like, cool tastes and stuff. So I would listen to it a lot and got to know it, but I don't know that I, like, really got what it was. And then I remember, years later, once I got more into jazz guitar and specifically, got into, I think I more immersed myself in Metheny before Scofield. And then it was so interesting to reevaluate that album and hear such different vocabularies, like, communicating to each other. And that became this thing I was, like, really fascinated with about that one particularly. And then also thinking about how, like, I would have heard that as, like, a young teenager, like, wow, what I wish I could, like, experience that feeling of, like, hearing this. And I think it really just sounded, it was too much. Like, it was all over my head. I wasn't parsing this stuff out, but anyway, that's the first, it's interesting though, because it's that does have a rhythm section, but it's another album of Scofield in communication with another guitar player, right? In conversation with another guitar player. But the first one that I got into, I think, it's all then, like, stuff just sort of started happening at the same time.
There's one answer. You and me are about the same age, Nick. There's one answer to that where I think you really got into it. And it's probably the same answer for me.
I think it's not what you expect me to say.
It's probably some John side or something.
Grace Under Pressure.
See, I knew that because we talked about that before. Yeah, that's right. Mine was Agogo.
That's what I thought.
Mean, that to me was like, I'd heard bits and pieces here, and I could tell as I wasn't fully into jazz guitar as a thing in '98 when it came out, but I was definitely into jam bands. I know you're surprised about that, Nick. And but when it's like, oh, Medeski, Martin Lawrence, Scofield, what's going on, right? And there was this Friday night jam session in my town, place called Miller's, I think it was. And some of the jazz nerds would go down there and play. And one time they asked me to sit in, like, oh, we're going to play a Scofield tune. I'm like, I don't know any Scofield tunes. It's like, oh, it's fine. It's called Agogo. It's 2 chords. You'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's like, okay. And I learned it like that night, playing it with those guys. And we would play it every Friday night for like 6 months. That'd be the tune I would just come and sit in on. I was like, what's this from? And it's like, oh, you got to check out this Agogo record. I was like, whoo. Because it was tunes, like, it was funky, it was groovy. He had, obviously he had this before this album, but he had this edge to the sound that I was really discovering. That when you talk about natural effects, Adam, you know, you could hear him play softer and the note would be smooth and coming out. And then you could hear him dig in and you hear this grit. And you knew he wasn't just hitting a pedal for that note. Like, I knew well enough then. But then it was all of a sudden that anytime I would play a major 7 interval at the same time with a little bit of grit, maybe through a Vox amp, I'm like, well, that's just add water, you get Scofield. Like, that's the sound, right? Like, I could play a line and end on that, and it feels like, wow, you must listen to a lot of Scofield. Like, you're right. Yeah, right. You know, like, that was my like circus trick to impress all the slightly older jazz musicians I was trying to keep up with at the time, right? But that, I mean, and to me, and I also think that record was a turning point in his career, because at that point now he could get on jam band festivals. He was like the jazzy guy on jam band festivals, and he was the jammy guy on the jazz festivals. And I think at that point, and I think even to this day, that kind of straddling of those worlds in a way, however there is to straddle, like, serves him well to this day. You know, you could see him at Bonnaroo, you could see him at, you know, Newport Jazz, you could see him at, you know, anything. You could see him open for anybody, right? Like that. And I think he's really kind of settled in. And that was the record where I feel like now, all these years later, you know, almost 30 years later, that there were so many seeds in that record that I was like, well, that's, looking back, those kind of aesthetic elements are going to be with him for the rest of his career. You know, these kind of jammy, funky things that he really kind of perfected with that Agogo record. What was your impression, Adam, when that Agogo record came out? Because you'd listened to all his development up until then.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I loved it. It did not. Yeah, it's not from where I had started with him. There, I don't know how else to say it, but it is a lot more fun than, you know, the place that I started with him. You know, there's a tune on this Larry Coryell record that I mentioned. It's called Ulster Fields, and it's a Scofield tune. He also recorded it on one of his own early records. And, you know, it's closer in the kind of tune it is to like maybe a Ralph Towner tune or something. Like, it's a waltz, and it might have some like major 7 sharp 5 chords in it. And that's the Scofield that I first was diving into. And even on like Still Warm, his sound is electric, and he's playing with a really hot rhythm section and stuff, but there's still a kind of a seriousness to it, a lot of chromaticism, you know, almost compositionally closer to where Mike Stern was at the time, and maybe a little bit. And then there's some kind of spacier tunes with odd harmony, like that were akin to Miles Davis's later stuff, like Tutu, just like kind of big spacious grooves with melodies over the top that felt like they were in different keys than what the bass player was doing, you know. Mm-hmm. So that's the Scofield that I loved. And then, but before I'll get to Agogo, is like, before that, he's kind of starting to drop some seeds of like, you know, this is a guy that probably also likes to play tequila or tune, like he'd figure out a way to like play tequila, but like change the harmony or go to a different key on the, like put the bridge in a different key and give it a different name, but it's basically tequila. And you could tell he's got a side of him that's really fun and has a kind of a wit about it and a lot of grease. And by the time you get to Agogo, it felt kind of like he's letting that side just be like, yeah, this is who I am. But it had been, there were hints of that on like,
on Groovelation,
sure,
on Hand Jive, yeah,
yeah.
he was touching
Mhm.
on that for sure.
But even on like Time on My Hands, you have like Wabash and like there was a Bass Desires record that
Yep.
he made with Mark Johnson, and you have like Samurai Hee Haw, and John Scofield. Yeah, it was like you said. I mean, it was brilliant of him to kind of align himself with the jam band thing because it was at that moment like kind of at peak. But also, I think it's just a very natural part of who he is and what he loves about music.
What was it about? I mean, to me, it does come back to his tone, because it's that I think he's kind of experimented with different amps and setups before, but it always seems to be like the core of his sound, at least in modern times, has been like his Ibanez, 335 style guitar with some pedals and an AC30. And to me, it's like, oh yeah, a jazz guitar player who plays an AC30, who isn't afraid to play loud, and that volume to me, when I finally saw him live, that volume to me was like such an integral part of his sound, even in a true, because he would have his amp turn up loud, but he would play so quietly, and there's a certain level
Yeah.
of dynamics that comes with that, and you got to have a certain touch with it, and not. I mean, I've seen Metheny a bunch of times. He's not that kind of player. Frisell's not that kind of player. Even Mike Stern is not that kind of player.
Right.
But Sco was able to take basically a rock guitar setup, and be able to, with his hands, completely transform that into something that would be so fitting for his music.
Right. The other guys that you mentioned, I think, on the whole, when if Frisell wants to go for a dirty sound, he'll step on a Rat or or a Jam Pedals Rattler or something in that flavor, and like, oh, that's where we're going right now, and it's a shift. Or Metheny sometimes will use these kind of wild sounds, but Scofield dials it in so that the amp is like hot, and or maybe it's with pedals, I don't really know, but it's always on the edge, and then he can do so much just kind of bare knuckle boxing style. And in a way, I mean, that's maybe one of the biggest influences of Scofield that I lean into, even.
I'm glad you mentioned that. I feel like that's what I hear in your playing, is the way that your actual touch on the guitar.
Yeah. I mean, of course, there's compositional things that I've borrowed or whatever from him, and certain chord voicings for sure. I mean, his chord vocabulary is something that somebody should write a book about. It's really a huge thing. But I think if I had to say the thing that, at least in my own estimation, the thing that I hear of Scofield the most in my own playing, it's that kind of on the edge of breakup thing where at any moment it could get it could go any direction just by touch. It's not this like grinding of gears when you step on some over the top pedal that puts you into a different territory. It's like, oh,
Right.
I saw Scofield. I was thinking about this when I knew I was going to talk to you guys. I was thinking about like times I've seen him live. I saw him in New York I don't know, 6 or 7-ish years ago at the Blue Note with Robin Ford, and they were doing this tribute to Mike Bloomfield.
Oh, nice.
And Robin had a couple of guitars. He might have had like a Telecaster and an SG and a pedal board of sort of medium size, if I remember. And Scofield was playing a Strat, a shell pink Strat into a 2-rock with a clip-on tuner and I think no pedals. And he sounded just like John Scofield. Which, if you just walked into the Blue Note and nobody told you who was playing and you saw a pink Strat and a 2-rock on a guitar stand and somebody said, I'll give you $20 if you can guess who's going to play that rig.
He wouldn't be in the top 5 guesses.
Right. You're not going to get, you're going to lose $20. Like that's not going to happen. But he sounded just like John Scofield,
So there's this great video of Scofield playing like just solo blues on a Telecaster, like in a guitar store.
Mm-hmm.
And
I've seen that.
Yeah, right. It's so good just to hear him play straight blues. And he's not trying to like jazz up blues. He's playing straight up, like almost Chicago style blues. And I know he's done the Ray Charles thing and he's done the New Orleans record. But John, if you're listening, I know you're a big fan. You never miss an episode. Man, a straight blues record would just be so great. Bring in Robin to play on a couple tracks or whatever. Like that to me, if you're like, what's your John Scofield wish list? I mean, okay, I love the country cover. Shania Twain's cool. Sure, 60s great, But man, a straight blues record would be number 1 on my list. And maybe a live one at that. I'm just throwing it out there. What's your number 1 Scofield wish list, Adam? What's number 1? You got it. He calls you up. He's like, Adam, I'm all out of ideas for the next record. Just tell me what I got to do. Just tell me. I'll do it.
That's tough. That's tough because
he's done so much.
He's done stuff with orchestra. He's done stuff with
solo. He just put out a solo record.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it said a lot that he called his solo record John Scofield. And, like that's a really like, hey, this is the record that is self-titled. Like this is me solo. Let me think about that, Jason. I mean, that's an amazing question. And it's just hard to answer because he has done so many things. He's got Scary Goldings with mono neon, like that's a cool thing. He's done all sorts of collaborations.
Not enough live records.
Fair. Yeah.
I think that's
fair.
Yeah. One of my favorite Scofield records is a live record.
Is it the Larry Golding's Jack DeJohnette one?
It is Pick Hits Live.
Yep.
That's a good one. That's a great one.
I really like Pick Hits Live. I really love his 80s output. That stuff for me is like that hits a really specific spot that like I know all those guys we were talking about were doing some like, I love Mike Stern 80s stuff. I love Frisell 80s stuff, but something about the Scofield 80s records like really hits for me. I was listening to loud jazz. I was at the dentist this morning driving home listening to loud jazz, which seemed weirdly appropriate. And and just to scratch that itch again. And man, Pick Hits Live was like a phase where like I hadn't really explored his 80s stuff and somebody turned me on to that, and then that album like really like blew my mind. And it wasn't that long, maybe that was like 10 years ago or something. I hadn't really done much with the 80s Scofield records, or really, I think I went through a phase of like, Stern's 80s albums too at the same time. And yeah, but I think that I want to go back to Adam mentioned like Scofield's chord voicings. And to me, those 80s records are specifically cool. Like this is what I was thinking about listening to loud jazz this morning is there's some really cool tight voicing stuff that I don't think that anybody else like it's kind of more common to hear players do this kind of thing now, that like it's close, and it's like, it's tonal stuff he's playing. He's not like taking it that far out. It's just like where he puts those notes in those voicings like really do it for me. And thinking about like, I'm a huge Frisell fan, and Frisell 80s records, like these wide, sparse but wide voicings, and this is like the complete opposite kind of thing. And I feel like that evolves throughout, like the way he approached that stuff sort of evolved throughout his career. But I know, Adam, you mentioned chord voicings, and you do have your guitar there.
Let's play John Scofield chord bingo. Yeah.
Yeah. Favorite John Scofield approach to chords, or if you might be in a better position to sort of sum up how he approaches this stuff than I am, at least.
Let me just see if I'm in tune enough. I mean, just right off the bat, like a voicing like that is probably something that I heard him do before anyone else. So what I'm playing, I realize this guitar has no dots, so maybe it's not the best guitar to teach with, but I'm playing A, B flat, D, which could be a B flat major 7, or could be a G minor with the 9 rubbing against the 3rd. And I heard him doing those kind of things, on those 80s records, and even a little in the early 90s, he made a record with Joe Henderson called So Near, So Far.
Yes.
Right, yeah.
And that was the record, actually, for me, where like his thing with voicings really just like, I was like, oh, this is a really special thing. So the things that I got, I think, were twofold. One, those kind of close things, which you can also do in a higher register. So I'm thinking like I'm playing C, E, F. And if you were thinking of this as like F major 7, you could just walk it through the scale. I'm running out of road here. But think of that with an electric guitar and a chorus pedal and that like a little edge of breakup sound. And then not always thinking of like, okay, F major 7, if that's what's on the page, I need to play some notes that belong in that chord, but more just like any note from that scale is fine. So if the band stays on F major 7 for a couple of bars, any of the voicings I just played might be okay. All kind of coloring that, and you especially hear that on that Musings of on the So Near So Far record, which is all Miles Davis related tunes.
That gets pointed out a lot as far as probably some of his best sideman work.
Yeah,
I mean, and really some of his best playing. It's probably a top 5 just Scofield record to begin with.
Yeah, for sure. So those kind of, I guess, 3 things. One is that kind of close voicing thing, but also related to that, just thinking of the whole, like, all of that is F major 7, and all of that is C7, and all of that is B flat Lydian. It's just, that was a big, like, big moment for me. Also, he does stuff sometimes with quartal voicings where like a typical jazz guitar player, if we had C major 7, might go and do these block chords like C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7. But instead of building those shapes, he would do the whole thing in fourths.
That's what I hear the most. That chordal stuff is what sticks out to me. And when you talk about somebody should write a book about his chord vocabulary, which I totally agree. What also I think, if we're populating our John Scofield library, is a book of all of his lead sheets of all his tunes, because he is like such a prolific composer, and his tunes are so cool and hip, and a good amount of them are very approachable for all levels of musicians. Like when you mentioned Wabash or Peculiar or Agogo or those kind of things, they're not like chop busting. They're tunes you can call it a jam session and not have the train fall off the track.
Yeah, my friend Ethan has the term jam busters. Those tunes are not jam busters. You could you could bring those to a jam and just show it to somebody and like, hey, I know it's a John Scofield tune, but listen, it's just 2 chords or the bridge goes here or whatever. And like by the second or third time around, everybody's on that train.
Let's roll.
And yeah, and if you made a John Scofield songbook, I think at this point it would probably be at least as thick as the real book. I mean, this guy has written.
I have my Metheny one sitting. Oh no, I thought I had my Metheny one on my shelf right here, but I think I took it home. But Metheny's the same way. Has so many tunes. I mean, it would be a substantial book that would, I think, benefit musicians of all levels.
And that is maybe something else that Scofield really influenced me to write my own tunes. You know, I mean, he has recorded standards over the years for sure, but it really hit me when I got Still Warm, and then, you know, as we've been talking about, kind of going forwards and backwards, it's like, wow, guitar trio doesn't have to mean all the things you are in Autumn Leaves and stuff. Like, you can write music, and so many of his tunes are, like you say, approachable. I think they would be fun to play even if you weren't a guitar player. They're just interesting harmonically, interesting melodically. He is a tune writer as much as a guitar player to me, you know.
Totally.
So what you're saying, Adam, is when he calls you up, you're his new A&R guy. He calls you up. You said, forget, we're not doing a new album. We're going to do a songbook of all your tunes.
I mean, that's not a bad idea. It is interesting that the guys of that generation, you know, Bill and Bill Frisell and John Scofield and Pat Metheny, on the whole, don't go back that much. You know, they keep writing new tunes, new projects. Occasionally, you know, they'll. But I remember, I don't know, like 10 years ago, Bill Frisell was at the Village Vanguard with the Bad Plus.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had actually proposed to him, let's do a week at the Vanguard where we only play, you know, your back catalog, where we play Rambler and Throughout and tunes from early in his career. And he was like, oh, okay, cool. You know, if you go see Pat Metheny and he plays James, you're going to flip out. Like, of course, like you want him to, you know, that's like his Cinnamon Girl or something, you know. But a John Scofield like songbook record, I mean, that's a really cool idea, cool. You know, to hear how he approaches those tunes now. I think on his solo record he did, is it Since You Asked? Is it that tune that he went back and redid?
I think so, yeah. Let me see here.
I'm looking.
He did Honest I Do, Mrs. Schofield's Waltz, Elder Dance, Since You Asked, yep, and Trust du Jour, yep.
Right. So that's an older tune of his from, I think, either the late 80s or early 90s. And it's neat to hear, then you really hear like, oh, all the growth, all the years of life, you know. I love it. I think that's a cool idea.
All right, to wrap up our Scofield talk here, Adam, I want Nick to do this too, and I will give me 2 underrated Scofield records that people can check out. Maybe something we haven't mentioned thus far.
You want me to go
Yeah,
first?
you go
Okay.
first.
Yeah.
That's right.
Bar Talk from 1980. Killer record. Again, great tunes, great sound. I think back then he was playing a 335. Great trio. Anyway, Bar Talk, killer record. I was just looking at my list. Well, huh. I think if people haven't heard the Bass Desires, it's not a Scofield record, but it's a Mark Johnson
It
record
counts, yeah.
with Bill Frisell also. It's just a really kind of footloose record. There's some incredible the way that Bill Frisell and Scofield, you mentioned this, Nick, that we often hear Scofield in relation to other guitar players. And in that period, he was doing more of that, recorded with Metheny, a couple of records with Frisell. There's a duo record with John Abercrombie called Solar. That's a great record. So and I find as a guitar player, you guys probably find this too, like when you play with another guitar player, you have to ask yourself, what is mine? So Nick, you were saying about how he did those kind of voicings that were different than what Frisell was doing, these kind of wide open impressionistic voicings, and Scofield was doing these crunchy voicings. Maybe that had something to do with it, like playing off of each other.
Yeah.
So those records with other guitar players, I find intriguing. So if I had to pick two, one would be Bar Talk, which is just him with bass and drums, and the other would be the first Bass Desires record.
All right.
Those
He
are
hasn't
good
mentioned
choices.
my two on my list, Nick. He was getting dangerously close. I was like, Adam, you stop mentioning records. You're stealing all our picks. All right, Nick.
So wait, what it was albums that have not been mentioned
That we think are like
under-recognized?
Yeah, under-recognized, let's say.
Okay.
I got a deep cut.
I really like, this isn't Scofield as songwriter. I really enjoyed in 2020 he put out that album Swallowtails of Steve Swallow's songs, and when that album came out, like I really got into that. Maybe it was that I interviewed both of them for that record, so both Steve Swallow and Scofield, and I don't know, so maybe it was that I was listening to it more closely, or maybe it was just that it came out in 2020 and I had more time to immerse myself in everything that I was listening to than I do in the rest of my life.
Yeah.
But I listened to it a whole lot and really felt like that album was something special. So I'm gonna say that one we haven't mentioned. I feel like this does get talked about or has been talked about a lot, so I don't know if I'm like shining new light on anything, but one that was a special one for me to listen to was Shinola. I think that's a ripper.
That's a killer record.
I feel like I don't want to not mention that. So
is that live? Is that also a live record?
Shinola is live, right?
Yes, it is. Yep. Mm-hmm. With Steve Swallow and Adam Nussbaum.
Adam Nussbaum, yeah.
Yeah, it was recorded in Germany, in Munich. Cool record.
Yes.
Like rocking.
Yes.
All right.
Yes. What do you got, Jason?
I can't believe we haven't named this record.
There you go. This is your chance.
The live en route. Right, with that opens with "We." That super fast rhythm changes tune. And that solo on "We" might be one of my favorite Scofield solos. It was recorded live at the Blue Note in 2003. They do some Swallow tunes. They do Alfie, and then a lot of Scofield tunes. Hammock Soliloquy is really good on there. Over Big Top is really good on there. But that en route record, top-notch live modern.
I'm writing it down.
I don't know that well.
That's shocking to me because I feel like that's one of his most talked about albums.
Really?
Yeah, I really do.
Okay.
That's amazing. Okay. So en route, that's number one. Here's number two. Here's the deepest of deep cuts. All right. Hold on. I'm going to pull it up here because I know I need to refer to it. Here it is. What the part of his career we haven't really talked about is he did a record with Phil Lesh and Friends, a Live at the Warfield record, where he plays all Grateful Dead tunes, right?
Right.
And the band is killer. It's Joan Osborne, Scofield, Larry Campbell, Greg Osby on saxophone, Rob Baracco on keys, and John Mello on drums. And he sounds so good on like Shakedown Street or Scarlet Begonias. Like you can kind of tell that even peripherally, that music has kind of been a part of his listening diet over the years. I think it sounds like it, anyways. Or he's just really, really good at guitar, which it could be both, I guess.
That just reminded me of a video. Hold on, I want to make sure that I get this right.
Live at the Warfield, Phil Lesh and Friends, prime deep cut Scofield.
Wow.
He did a solo guitar version of Stella Blue.
I've seen that. Yes.
Or no, it's not solo guitar.
Oh.
Sorry, it's him and John Medeski playing Stella Blue. That is amazing.
That's great.
It's like his interpretation of Grateful Dead music is, I think he's got a special angle on that stuff.
He does.
Okay, I have to say that's a blind spot for me. I haven't put my ears on that.
Man, hearing him on Morning Dew and Dark Star, he was great. So great.
Wow.
And that was 06 is when, and I think that's kind of 06 was kind of when the start of when him and Phil started to play together. And then of course Phil just, it seemed like every other week was just rolling the dice to see what guitar players would join his band, this week or whatever. And he done some stuff much later on. I remember the first Phil Les show I saw, Robin Ford was in the band.
Wow.
That's
they were opening for Bob Dylan. It was like Phil Lesh. Who was the other guitar? I'm blanking on who it is. Robin Ford was one of. Oh, it was
Kimmock?
No, it was the guy from Little Feat.
Oh, not Fred Tackett.
No, I think it was Paul.
Oh, Paul.
I think it was Paul and Robin Ford were the guitar players. It was one of the guys from Little Feat. I'm pretty sure it was Paul. But that was an insane hearing Robin Ford on, Stella Blue or something.
Yeah.
Like it was nuts. So, well, Adam, we talked about your records at the top of the show. What do you have going on that people can check out now? We have the new record, of course, that Nick mentioned. You have some live stuff coming up over the next couple of months that people can check out.
Yeah, I don't know when this will air, but if I'm playing October 20th in New York, in Brooklyn, New York, with my friend Rich Hinman, an incredible pedal steel guitar player. In
Does
November,
he make you call him Professor Hinman?
Prof.
Yeah.
It's like a yes chef kind of vibe, but it's yes prof. Whatever he says,
right.
I have to say yes prof.
Yep.
Yeah, he's wearing tweed jackets on the gig now. It's insane. He just writes the set list on a chalkboard. So that's coming up, and eventually we will have a live record out. We've already recorded it, but we're still like sorting through, which are the keeper tunes and stuff. So that'll be for next year. But that's a show that's coming up. And then in November, I'm going to Europe with Liz Wright. She's a singer that I've been working with for a number of years. She's incredible. We're playing a bunch of shows all around Europe in November. And then in December, if you're somebody in Los Angeles, I'm playing again with Rich Hinman. In mid-December, we've got a couple of live shows out there.
Nice.
And
your website is?
AdamLevy.com.
There we go.
You also have a very well-curated and extensive Bandcamp page with all your stuff on there.
Yes.
Right.
Which is how I remembered that the album I was reaching for, I thought it was from 2023. I thought it was more like, I thought it came out months ago, but time moves really fast these days. I have a toddler. Time is really weird for me. But I wanted to shout out your album Spry, because I think that album is a special one of yours for me. And that's got Larry Grenadier and Joey Barron on it. And can't ask for a better trio than that.
No.
And I really enjoyed when that album came out. I really enjoyed that one.
Thanks, Nick. Wow, that's nice to hear. Thank you.
Yeah. And the stuff that you do with Rich, by the way, I only know that via clips on social media. So I'm really excited to hear that you're going to release a live album, because I think that stuff sounds so cool. You guys sound, so great together.
Thanks.
It seems like a lot of energy in that band.
Yeah, true. Well, I should say, we do have a couple of studio records out, but they're not on my Bandcamp because we started our own, Rich Hinman versus Adam. So we have two studio releases, and we released one live track. We had this idea, Rich had this idea that he would just record all of our shows on his iPhone and we'd release whatever sounded good. And that somehow got abandoned. We released one track that sounded really good, but we've got now in the can like stuff recorded live to a tape, like live to 2-track reel-to-reel tape that sounds really good. So there'll be something coming out next year. I can't really say more than that, not because it's secret, but just because we're not far enough along for me to say much more than that.
Tight embargoes around here, Adam. Tight embargoes. All right, Adam, thanks again, buddy. We'll talk soon.
Thanks for joining us. All right, so thanks again to Adam for joining us.
Legendary guy. Big hang. Just one of the best guitar hangs.
Man.
Anytime you're around him, it's always great.
And he's done some legendary studio work, but he's also made some amazing records.
Yep.
So please check those out, because Adam is the real deal. Before we get out of here, I want to give a little, I want to throw back to the previous episode real quick, which was the last episode we did was the Adrian Belew episode. And just the other night, I saw David Byrne's performance here in Philadelphia, and I was thinking about Adrian. And just one thing I wanted to, I've been sort of marinating on. The David Byrne show at the Met in Philadelphia, I saw the first night. It was unbelievably great. Really immersive experience. I don't know, Jason, have you seen any like photos or videos of like what they're doing on this tour?
I have not.
Yeah, so it's like a totally immersive screen thing. Like the whole stage is like a background of screens, and then I didn't know we were on the floor. I didn't know the floor of the stage was also a screen, and I did just the next day I was talking to a friend who told me about it, and then I started to see videos of that. So it's like the band were actually just like immersed in screens for the whole concert, and it's sort of like a marching band. It's like part marching band, part Broadway show.
Now you're talking. You're talking with as a marching band dad. Now you're talking my language.
So the drums are broken up. They're marching band drums, basically. They're playing drum kit parts, but broken up. And there's like triggers on the drums and stuff. Sometimes they sound like drum machines. Really cool. Like the technical aspect of the show, unbelievable, right? And so I was thinking about how like technically something like this, if this is like it's so modern, the technology they're using and the way that they're doing it. But something really interesting is the way that the guitar works in the show. It's actually like, as much as it's all advancement of technology and stuff, but it's sort of like, I know you're into modeling, and obviously, and everything. I don't know what the guitar player is, a guy named Ray Suen, unbelievable guitar player. You know about that guy? He's done a lot of stuff. Yeah. Great guitar player, and he's doing dance moves the whole time. He is, everybody's dance. There's everything is highly choreographed. But something that's really interesting is like he played a couple solos, really, really cool solos, but the sounds are all dialed in, and they sounded amazing. Like the sound of this show was super hi-fi. But last episode we were talking about Adrian, and I was thinking about all the work that he had to do to make those sounds, right? It's so interesting from an analog perspective. And you can see videos of him with the Talking Heads playing the same songs, where he is holding the guitar up against the amp, and he's turning some things, and he's, doing various things to create basically like practical effects on the guitar, right? And now you can just have a modeler that does those things. And so this is just an open-ended thought. And again, in practice and the way that Ray was doing this, I loved, and it was beautiful playing. The band was unbelievable. everything about that concert was fantastic. But as far as modern guitar technology goes, and it relates to modern guitar technology, I kind of wondered if like modeling is a little bit like AI taking all the creative jobs and taking all the fun jobs and leaving the hard jobs, that nobody wants to do. Which is not yet, but eventually that being the case. And it's like I
And the hard
love
job being
making the sounds. Yeah.
Oh, no. I mean, because it's not, modeling doesn't make it easy.
So that's what I was wondering.
It makes
like
it
how
easy in terms of you don't have to like go dig up enough. Like if you're using just a straight analog rig and you need a phaser and you don't have a phaser in your immediate presence.
Yeah.
Yes, you need to go get a phaser and bring it into your presence, right?
Yeah.
That's probably the part of the process that modeling completely cuts out. It's not necessarily easier in terms of getting the sounds, because depending on your level of familiarity with the particular modeler, there could be a bunch of unnecessary menus you need to go through, or trying to figure out how to get the routing together and all that. But the controls and the routing is the exact same as it is. If you want to split off and do a 2 amp rig and put the reverb after the amp or do that kind of stuff, you still have to conceptually think of it the same way in a modeler as you would in an analog rig.
Yeah.
You just have to sit there and tweak. And to me, the sound, when people are like, oh, I don't like the sound of a modeler or whatever, 80% of the sound is how you're monitoring it. Do you have good headphones? Sure. Do you have an FRFR speaker? Is it through a PA?
The sound of Ray's guitar at the David Byrne show, sound was amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because not surprisingly, who knows what he was using, whether it could be a fractal, a helix, a quad cortex, doesn't really matter. But the way you, as the audience, are hearing it is through an incredible system, so it sounds great.
Yeah. So it's like, basically it's like enabling us to have more tools at our disposal, but you feel as though it's like it's not taking away the creative part of it.
No, because in a modeler you can do things you can't do in an analog world. So it opens, like putting the reverb after the speaker.
Right. Yeah.
You can't do that in a regular pedal amp situation really very easily.
Yeah.
That's more studio trickery, that you could do. But no, I don't. I mean, and plus, anytime something like that comes along, like a modeler or whatever, it gives you more options, and to some people that could be a option paralysis, but it does give you more options.
Yeah.
Well,
so, that's it was something cool to think about that I think I was really just tuned into because we had so recently talked about Adrian and then hearing those guitar parts. But really, it's fun to think about that stuff, and I'm definitely modeling curious.
I'm telling you, come on over. Come on over, buddy.
And it is like I don't have all those tools at my disposal. And I'm not going to have the same tools at my disposal that were available to Adrian Blue in 1978, right?
Right.
But I want to make those sounds. As long as it's increasing my fun, it's like that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, and that just depends on how well you get along with the modeler itself. But it's it's another, like, and I think it's also important. Like for me, I really saw the convenience and the beauty of it when I started to have a gig where I had to use a modeler.
Yeah, yeah.
If this is a Tuesday night noise gig in South Philly, I mean, yeah, sure. You know what I mean?
I'm going to use whatever they got. I'm not that worried on that gig.
I'm going to give a shout out to Joe Gore because he made the great Joe Gore, because he made a bunch of Helix pedal board presets.
Oh.
That, I mean, they're wild. It really pushes the boundary of what he only makes them for Helix, for what the Helix can do. Like one, he just said the only rule is that everything about signal flow, you have to reverse it.
Okay.
So like the speaker is the first thing you're going into in the signal chain.
Oh, weird.
Or I think there's one set of pedal boards called like Blood and Pasta, which I mean there's a jazz set of pedal like which don't sound like typical jazz or whatever. But those are like some of the more creative. I don't know if I'd ever find like those are the type of pedal board presets that maybe somebody like you would be into because you're like, hey, I have this thing. I'm going to get these presets just to create new sounds just for my own thing. You're not doing those sounds for a gig. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, whereas my use has mostly been, I need XYZ sounds for a gig.
Right.
How do I best organize that in my modeler?
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
So, all right, I also have a thing to mention.
Yeah, hit it.
Our dear friend Amanda Monaco has a
friend
new
of the pod.
record out. Friend of the pod has a new record out called Death Blow. It's out now. It's
Death Blow. When someone tries to blow you up, not because of who you are, but because of different reasons altogether. You know what that's from?
Right. No, I don't.
It's the tagline to the fictional movie Death Blow from Seinfeld. Which I don't know if that's what her reference is. Something tells me it's not, but maybe it is. Maybe she's a big Seinfeld fan. We should find out.
Yeah, when I first met her 20 years ago, she had this idea for this group and stuff, and I think she told me. Now I don't want to get this correct. Either she told me this is not what this particular album sounds like, but I can't remember if she told me this was like a tagline for somebody describing one of her records, or maybe in a review or something. But it sounded like a fire in a pet store, like free jazz sounds like fire in a pet store.
I don't think that this album sounds like that.
No.
This is fairly organized music.
And that line though, how she thought it was hilarious. That line just always has stuck with me. So, but she's a professor at Berkeley, incredible player. Like I said, friend of the pod. So
friend of the pod, great band on here. Michael Atias on alto and baritone saxophone, Sean Conley on bass, and Satoshi Takeishi on drums.
That's right.
Of whom I am a big fan. I really like his playing.
And who recommended Satoshi to Amanda? I'm going to bring this all the way around.
Oh, was it
all
you?
All the way around. No.
Oh.
Adam Levy.
No way.
Yep. That's true.
All right. See what a legend Adam is?
Exactly, right?
That's cool.
So head on over to amandamonaco.com. Check out the record.
Yeah, it's a really cool record. Amanda's compositions are great, and her playing is, I don't know. I was about to say even better. I don't know. They're both great. It's not even better. They're both better. Really cool tunes. There's
more better.
Like, I don't know. I think I'm the power of suggestion here might be working a little bit for me, that I'm seeing, the name of the album is Death Blow. There's this like animated cover that's black and white. I'm getting like a noirish vibe from these tunes, like noirish avant-garde jazz. I don't know if that's totally fitting. That might be me. I don't know if anybody else would hear it that way, but I feel like it's there. And Amanda has a really cool guitar tone. We didn't ask what guitar she uses on here, but I see videos of her with that Klein.
My guess is probably the Klein. It's either Klein or cool. Brian Moore is all I've really seen her play in 20 years-ish or so. So, but yeah.
Well, thank you, Amanda, for sending that over. It is a great record. Definitely check it out if you are into adventurous guitar playing.
All right. And thanks again to Two Rock Amplifiers for sponsoring today's episode. Head on over to two-rock.com and check out all their offerings.
All right. Well, we will see you next week.
See you next week.